Welcome to the RockCreek Climate Summit. Today, we try to answer some of the most critical questions in the climate discussion. Everywhere we look, climate news is grim. There are droughts in South Africa for the last 3 years. Historic floods in Europe devastating entire towns. Weeks-long record heat waves in the western United States causing fires, melting Antarctic ice sheets that could raise sea levels as much as 8.5 inches by the end of the century. Today, we will talk to leaders across this challenge about where the solutions are, how to marshal capital, and the best ways to drive systemic, dynamic, critical change. I hope today's discussion can help build the roadmap to harness this transformative technological and economic moment to make this change a reality.
The shift to clean energy can actually open huge opportunities for job growth. And climate shouldn't just be considered a challenge. It should be looked at as an opportunity for the United States to recapture our clean energy economy and win the 21st century.
We need everyone explaining the economic benefits to our country, the wealth generation, the technology innovation that will be unleashed if we do this right.
There is the most exciting intellectual fervor at the moment on sort of how do we get to this net zero? What is net zero? How do we get there? What would a short-term path be to get there? So it's profoundly exciting.
Are there an engineering or a civil servant mindset that says we can only commit to a goal that we know we can achieve? Well, of course, what Kennedy did was he said, no, we're going to do it. Right, and I don't care if you guys in MIT say we don't even have the mathematics to calculate the orbital trajectories, just figure it out, we're going to do it. And so I think that's the kind of leadership that we need now, saying we have to do this, and let's back ourselves as engineers, as innovators, as financiers for figuring out the solutions. So any target that we know how to achieve is not ambitious enough.
We need capitalism to work for more people in more places. We just do. And guess what? We're capable of that. You know, it's always impossible until it gets done, and we can get this done. And specifically, I think with a focus on race, place, and gender, we can bring more people into capitalism, which, by the way, is not even just a social justice thing. It's smart innovation.
Philanthropic funding can actually be one of those acupuncture moments. We can fund the research, the data collection, the analytical framework development to help people actually go through the kind of analysis that you need to do to make good decisions when there are very vexing trade-off questions.
We have ignored what is happening right here in our own backyard, and it's time for us to focus. And I think that looking inward and looking at a lot of these areas, especially a lot of the areas that are represented by the WEJAC, to see where the investment opportunities are will be a good place to start.
The challenge when you're talking about the climate issue or energy issue, you know, broadly, of which fossil fuels has been a big part of the traditional energy sector, is, you know, you're not talking about selling off, you know, $30 million in a, you know, $200 billion portfolio. You know, you're talking about billions.
Look to the communities that are always disadvantaged, always left behind. The minority communities, those that live in environmentally challenged communities. Hire those people. Give them the training, make them the apprentices.
We're at the end of a 40-year era, and we're entering a new era. And that last era, the only thing I'll focus on here in that last year was about hydrocarbons. The era that we're going to have now, and I don't know how long it's going to last, is going to be about moving away from hydrocarbons to more renewable, more sustainable things. We're just, nobody's debating the fact that that's going to happen. We're just debating how it's going to happen or how long it's going to take.
So we are turning this on its normal planetary head. And instead, we're thinking about what do people need? Where are they now? What do they need to move forward and feel hopeful and good about themselves? So this is all a strategy to look at how we fundamentally grow jobs in a way that's going to invest in our climate future.
Governance, the head of the organizations, the head of the companies, the head of the institutions need to change the mindset and connect to probably the other part of the spectrum that is the young talent that is joining every organization with the expectation that this must be in the center of the agenda, in the center of the business model, in the center of how we govern our institutions and how we move forward.
By 2030, science says we need to be 50% less carbon emission than today. That is a very high bar. Yeah, please think about it. That is the last decade, we actually totally did not succeed in reducing. So that said, we actually have 3 other challenges in addition to that. We have to recover every economy there is. There is no economy that doesn't require recovery, which means we have to create jobs. We have to create quality of life for people because of what has just happened in health. So countries across the world face this multiple challenges at the same time. So our job is to figure out, to get there, we would need a slightly different kind of economic system. We need the money to go to different investments than there is.
The most expensive things for us to produce from an environmental perspective are the things that we put all these natural resources into, transport halfway around the world, and then throw away. What if we could isolate materials from food to create a product that would slow down other food from going bad?
You can meet 2 experts, and one will say, it's fantastic what we're doing. I mean, it's amazing, the progress. And the other one says, we're falling over a cliff. You know, it's Armageddon. And the question is, which is right? And the answer, they're both right. They're both right. The image I like is the notion of, you know, we're doing so much better. We're like a dog that's running faster and faster, chasing a bus. The problem, the bus is the problem, if you like, of climate change that needs to be solved. The problem is the bus is accelerating. So even though the dog is doing better and better, it's still falling further behind.
Clearly, there's a need to invest in sustainable infrastructure. We cannot build the way we have built and expect it to last with what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with rising groundwater levels. We're dealing with sea level rise. We're dealing with deluges of rain. And that's going to be a problem that we will see around the country if we do not pass the type of infrastructure bill to address these real-time issues that we're dealing with.
Some organizations will need simplicity and uniformity given their scale and size. I think other organizations can afford to have a little bit more complexity, and I think foundations are organizations like that. We don't have investors who are going to be able to impose expectations on us. We're largely immune from political risk, unless it's political risk that we decide to impose on ourselves. And I think that will allow us to embrace complexity, which will then be useful to others.
Issues related to equity, diversity, and inclusion, that's become a growing part of our efforts, not just on gender and race and sexual orientation, gender identification, disability rights. I mean, there's a whole new area, a newer area of priority. But I always try to say to folks, we're not going to let up on the climate piece.
We don't have choices here about losing. There's no second choice here. Right. In that we can just understand the challenges we're facing and turn those into opportunities. And that's the only way you're going to get enough people excited rather than sticking their heads in the ground and wondering what tomorrow looks like.
It's not a technologically risky proposition to do batteries in the same way that solar wasn't technologically risky in 2005. It was 50-year-old technology then, and yet it wasn't considered mainstream. It was considered risky by the capital markets.
There are some aspects of economics that really do need to be changed. Most importantly, most ministries of finance and planning around the world use economic models that are based on the notion of equilibrium. That's how they work. Basically a model is a great big series of simultaneous equations, and they have to be solved. That's how a model works. It looks into the future. The problem is most of them, almost all of them, assume that the economy will adjust to bring itself back into equilibrium. That, it turns out, is not a very helpful assumption if you want to really plan for the future.
We can influence what the public sector does through public policy, development, and advocacy and research, or if we can influence corporate behavior and corporate practice through advocacy, but also through investment and other tools of leverage, then we can produce bigger systemic change.
We really should be careful and look through the sort of the superficial lens of a lot of investment opportunities and try to understand what's really behind them and see if we can actually continue to do things better and get to a more sustainable future.
COVID has shown us all why sustainability matters, and also why, as and when we hopefully come out of the pandemic, and we still can't celebrate that yet, but as and when we do finally come out of the pandemic, we need to not just build back, but build back better.
We all feel a sense of this needs to change. Somebody should do something about that. And we all need to be that somebody, really, where we see opportunities, where we see small ways we can make a difference, where we see really big radical ideas. We need to use this time to feel that sense of urgency.
This is the chance we have right now. So talking again to people who are, whether they're sitting in foundations, whether they're sitting in academia, what would be your one message?
I would say keep up the pressure, keep working, keep explaining how this is the job creation opportunity of a generation.
We now live in a totally different economics, the economics of the new climate economy. It says that actually smart, strong climate action leads to greater economic efficiency, it drives new technologies, and it lowers risks. And these three things combined are a very powerful cocktail that actually leads to more investment, a whole new economy out there with new technologies, more competitiveness, and so on. Now, most politicians in the world still don't get that. The amazing thing is that corporations increasingly are getting that, and most exciting of all, the financial sector is starting to get this.
Well, I just want to tell you how excited I am about you and all of these women investors. I couldn't be more excited. It's the reason why I'm here. I always tell everybody that climate change is really a result of man-made emissions, which is why women need to rule the world. So I want you all to take that to heart and go with it.
I mean, we covered a lot of turf today. There were some divergent opinions, which I think just made the conversation more robust. I certainly agree that we were informed really well by policy with Senator Markey and Administrator McCarthy, but the full spectrum between philanthropy and finance, pension funds, and the full range of pressures that are out there. The other piece is innovation. I heard that a couple of different times today.
Innovation, of course.
So, there is room for innovation. There absolutely must be, and I think that's something to track.
Well, I think to be continued and on to our next set of discussions, but I thought
it's fabulous. It was a really great meeting. There was, I said, a lot of content, a lot of inspiration, a lot of clarity about it is a new century. It's the climate century, and we need to mobilize. So I would say at the end, I'm going to go back to what Markey said, and I'm going to look around the room here a little bit. It also is a movement, and it also is significant a movement of younger people that are making this happen, because they realize that it has to happen. It's their future, it's their children's future. So the movement aspect of this and the youth-driven, maybe that energy, I love that starting the meeting, and it was throughout the meeting.
Absolutely. We don't think there has ever been a better time to invest in the climate-smart future. There has never been better opportunities to integrate the mission of an organization with the returns they need. This summit, I hope, will be one step in ratcheting up our global ambition to build a 21st century climate-smart, inclusive economy that works for all people and our planet.